what is the true essence of black girl magic? Each week, I sit down for a deep and meaningful conversation with some of Africa's most inspiring women and hear their stories of love, loss, and second chances. My name is Dawn Faith. Join me on this journey of discovery.
Don't you ever give up, don't you ever give up. God hears the whisper of your heart.
I hope you're all ready, because today is going to get a little bit deeper than our regular Old Deep. We're going to spend the first half hour of this episode talking about a subject that is very close to my heart. In celebration of World Prematurity Month, I wanted to offer a small glimpse into the reality faced by the nearly 15 million women around the world who give birth early every year. My guest today is Nobuntu Webster. Amongst the many things we share in common, being authors, businesswomen, wives, and goddaughters, we are also both mothers to babies born prematurely. My daughter Zinhle Grace McKay was born at 23 weeks and 5 days. Zinhle fought a strong and relentless battle, but after 3 months she could fight no more. Given how common premature birth and death is, it's both surprising and concerning that it continues to be a subject that we as women seem so unwilling to discuss. Nobuntu and I sat down over a drink to reflect on our journeys and what we would have liked to know before embarking on the greatest challenge of our lives. This is my deep and meaningful conversation with Nobuntu Webster. Tell me about your journey into womanhood. When did you realize you were a woman, and what does that even mean for you?
This question makes me feel like such a late bloomer. Because, to be honest, I only realized I was a woman, or fully realized I was a woman, when I had a child.
Okay.
And that was when I was 27.
Okay. Yeah.
So I'd been married, but having a child was just something else.
Okay.
And it evoked things in me that I didn't know I had.
Wow.
I didn't know I could love like that.
Wow.
I didn't know I could care for somebody like that.
Yeah.
I didn't know I could be vulnerable like that. Because, I don't know, maybe it's society, maybe it's our moms, but even when you love a man, for instance, my husband, there was always a ish. Just in case. That I keep her. Backup plan, keep her. But with being a mother, when I became a mother, there was just these gentle, tender things that I discovered about myself that weren't there before. And I think I really, I was like, this is what it feels like to be a woman.
Yeah. And what does it mean? Like, do you know what I mean?
It means that I've given birth to the nation's children.
Wow.
Basically.
Wow.
It gave so much more meaning to my purpose.
Wow.
It gave so much more meaning to what I've got to give to the world.
Okay.
So all of a sudden, there are people who will live beyond us.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, there are other people somewhere who need to have some sort of nurturing in their lives. It might not be me, but I could contribute and impact and add to it by what I do.
Wow.
All of a sudden, I love people in a different way.
Okay.
So all of a sudden, I love my husband in a different way.
I felt that.
All of a sudden, I'm softer, I'm more tender. So it meant so much for just who I was and who I was to people, but also just for purpose and for why I live.
Wow, that's amazing.
Incredible.
That's amazing. Have you enjoyed motherhood?
Without a doubt. I've absolutely enjoyed motherhood. It's hard. It's hard. Being a driven woman, and being a woman of purpose. So who's involved in all sorts of other things as well. And still being a mom is hard. And also because I want to do the mom thing fully. Because let's be honest, right now my eldest is 8. My youngest is 4. In 10 years, like it's over.
Pretty much, ne?
So I want to do it properly. So it's hard because I want to do it properly.
And you want to be devoted to your job.
And I want to be devoted to my job. And I want to be devoted to my purpose. And I want to be devoted to all those things. So that's why it's hard. But I love it. So My second born was a prem.
Yes, I was going to talk about that, yeah.
Yeah, and
How early was he born?
31 weeks.
Wow. That's scary, eh? Because I've been there.
I still cry when I talk about it. I mean, he's 4.
Yeah.
But I still cry when I talk about it.
It's a life-changing experience, ne?
Like, you're never, ever the same. I think also what made it worse for me is that I knew what it was supposed to happen because I had a child before.
You knew the journey.
So I knew the journey.
Yeah.
I know what's supposed to happen. And when the time came to give birth, I knew what was supposed to happen.
Yeah.
And things just didn't go that way. And
what happened? Do you mind just sharing the
yeah,
story?
let
Was
me
it
share
a
what
surprise?
happened. I learned so much from that. I also learned about the superwoman phenomenon, or the superwoman tendency that I have as a person. And I'd been pregnant, I'd been flying up and down, going to meetings, running business, doing this type of thing, having been told that you actually now shouldn't be doing this.
Okay.
I don't know, we don't want to let go.
Yeah.
And I learned the hard way to just trust God.
Wow.
With my life.
Wow.
With provision, with who I am and with what I have. So I had been running around like crazy, still pushing. And this one day, something was just wrong. Fortunately, my mother, who lives in Durban, was up in Joburg that day.
Wow.
And she was at home, and she's a nurse by profession.
Yeah.
And I was like, Mama, something
I don't
is
feel
going
right.
on.
Yeah.
And she's like, huh? Let me see. And she was like, you need to call your doctor. Called my doctor, and my doctor was like, you need to come in and you need to pack your clothes to stay for a while. So I was like, no, that's still. No, that doesn't quite work with my life.
That's not the plan.
Right now, not the plan.
No.
So not going to happen. He says, can I speak to your husband? Speaks to my husband, who then just packs my bag, and off we go to hospital. Even then, so then I'm in hospital, and we're waiting, basically.
To figure out what's going on.
We find out that I have, my waters have broken early, and though we'll wait and see if there isn't an infection. We can wait for a couple of days. So we wait for a couple of days.
And this is out of the blue?
Out of the blue. I think it hadn't been an easy pregnancy, though. Okay. It hadn't been an easy one. I didn't think it would come to that.
Yeah.
Day 3 or 4, I get woken up at like 5 a.m. by the nurses. So when you're in hospital, they do this thing where they're checking you while you're sleeping throughout the night. The lights are never off, whatever. Yeah. So they check, and my temperature's gone up, which meant that there was an infection. So they wake me up at 5 a.m. and they're like, you're going to have your baby. We've checked your temperature. We called your doctor. He says you have to have your baby. Like, now. I cried. I was like, there's no such, that is not happening. It's too early. And you know, the funny thing is, I carried my first child full term and I took it for granted. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I wish it could just come early.
Yeah.
But no. I was just like, no, it's not happening. They're like, no, it is. And I went to theater. And, you know, my husband is amazing. Yeah. Because my husband was there with the camera, with everything, acting like this.
It's a normal birth.
As normal.
Yeah.
This is how the plan was. Yeah. He was smiling. He was just like he did with our firstborn. Yeah. There was no panic. He was excited. Yeah. Well, he tells me now he was
freaking out.
It was all an act. But he tried to make the whole thing as normal as possible. Possibly. And the baby came. I know that they're supposed to put him on my chest and I'm supposed to hug him and I'm supposed to kiss him, but that doesn't happen. They just brushed his lips against mine, and then I heard the words distress.
Oh no.
I broke down. And the nurse found me there and said, what's wrong? And I'm like, my child died.
No, because the last thing you heard was distress. Babe.
And the baby came. I know that they're supposed to put him on my chest and I'm supposed to hug him and I'm supposed to kiss him, but that doesn't happen. They just brushed his lips against mine, and then I heard the words distress.
Oh no.
And you never want to hear those words as a mom.
Yeah.
And that was the last thing. And then off they went with my child, and my husband went, and I came to, I don't know how much longer, but I was in the holding room.
Yeah.
And I thought my child had died.
Babe.
So I broke down. And the nurse found me there and said, what's wrong?
going
And I'm like,
on?
my child died.
No. Because the last thing you heard was distress. Babe.
And obviously she went to go find someone, and they came back and they were like, no. And they came back with my husband. He's like, the baby's fine. He's going to be okay. Just a few issues with his heart. But he's going to be fine. You're going to see him just now. They're going to take you to see him. And he was in hospital for, I think it was about 18, 19 days.
Wow.
And he came home. And him coming home, we've got a photo of the day he came home.
Yeah.
Him coming home was the most glorious day.
Yeah.
Home felt empty.
Because you got discharged, and every day you go home with no baby.
You go home.
Babe, that's the worst thing. I remember that. I remember that feeling.
You go home.
Yeah, and having to express milk.
Express milk. I ended up expressing for
back.
the whole world, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm this dairy. You know, women with who have small breasts have lots of milk. I end up expressing for the whole neonatal ward, for the whole of ICU. And just the gratitude of getting to live with him. Yeah. I mean, of course, you're still nervous for a while after that. Yeah.
Before you had a prem baby, do you feel that it was a subject matter that you'd been exposed to prior to that? Because my biggest issue, I found after my daughter was born, when the Sozinze was born at 23 weeks and 5 days.
Yeah, I remember.
My biggest challenge was how alone, it felt, because no one had spoken about it. So then it felt like it was some secret then that even I, at the time, I couldn't necessarily post anything, you know, let alone Vela, you're dealing with a lot of emotions, and the last thing you want is to be posting. But there's such a sense of privacy.
It is.
Around having babies that are born prem. When you look at the stats, every third or fourth person is actually giving birth to a prem baby.
It's almost like a shame. It's almost like you can't show
you failed.
them. I wasn't exposed to it till then. But the beautiful thing is, being the days of social media, all of a sudden, when I shared that this is what had happened, there were all these
people coming out of the woodworks. Yeah, and you're just like, why didn't you say?
Oh, we were there for 4 weeks. Oh, we were there. I'm like,
I was there for 3 months. I was in hospital with a child for 3 months. 3 months expressing on a machine and having to wake up
like
clockwork, ne? Every 3 hours, having to wake up, put the express machine, put the fridge, label the milk so that you don't get it. Yeah, and then go to hospital in the morning. And the thing for me, that was a real struggle because of how separated that life is. I then had quite a significant depression post, and this is even before the child passed away. But just before that, and I think that even looking at the stats in South Africa around women across the skin color who are having babies early for a range of reasons, one of my ongoing struggle is the sense of it needs to be private, because in that, for me, then when she passed away, do you know what? I felt so ashamed that I failed. Do you know what I mean? Like, I felt that maybe that's why people don't talk about it. Maybe they don't talk about it because there's an expectation that, like, your body is made for this. Like, you know, there's the purpose that you come into, but there's also the physical nature. The reason I'm woman and not man is so that I can carry a baby. And I had failed in one thing, Lalela, that I didn't even have to do anything to, do you know what I mean?
You didn't have to qualify.
Because everyone just, there's no school, you know? And I think for me that was really hard, and I've spent so much time now trying to have the conversations about the realities of actually giving birth, that even back in the days, our parents and our grandparents did actually give birth to prem babies, and the mortality rate was even worse in that space. But in all the things as women that we want to be perfect in, we've also then placed this pressure of the expectation that we all are going to fall pregnant, and the number of and the number of people, do you know what I mean? And the number of people I meet who want to have kids, but it's just not happening for them. And then the level of shame and hurt that comes from them is, you've been married for 5 years, still no children. Do you know what I mean? And then when you go through the issues of miscarriage, and then the number of women who are also my friends who are just like, I had a miscarriage. I'm like, babe, that's a big deal. Like then the next day you just came and we had coffee and then, do you know what I mean?
You never told anybody half the time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and there's the blame thing, you know?
Yeah.
You blame yourself. You're like, what did I do wrong? What didn't I do right? Is it
that extra day when I wore the heels and I shouldn't have worn them? Is it when I just stepped abruptly? Maybe if I stepped more gently. Yeah. As I've already mentioned, there is more to Nobuntu than being a mum to a prim baby. Stay tuned, we'll learn more about this phenomenal woman. Let's talk about you mothering your son. I'm very aware that the way we mother our children, we've been given an opportunity now to kind of create or inform and contribute towards the new generation. So how I raise my son, the principles and the values that I instill in him matter. Sure. And the amount of time I spend with him matters because it will influence the kind of man he will be. What would you say are the critical things that you are instilling in your boys that would make them be significant black men in the next few years?
You are enough.
Yay!
You were born enough. You have everything in you to be who you were supposed to be. And you are everything you're supposed to be. There is so much pressure to be some kind of way. My eldest son, we've been grappling for maybe the past 2 or 3 years with a child who just doesn't fit into the box.
No.
Who just doesn't. At school, especially now he's in grade 2. He just doesn't do things the way he's supposed to. He doesn't think in the order he's supposed to. He thinks in his own way. He is a free spirit. He's a creative child. You know, there's so much pressure for him to become something that he's not.
Wow.
And I think one of the things my husband and I are trying to instill in him is, and what we're trying to create an environment and to put him and make sure he's in an environment that nurtures who he is.
Great.
And that sees the gifting in who he is.
Great.
So I think that's one of the most important things is you are enough.
Yeah. And if you'd had a daughter, what do you think would there be firstly, a significant difference in how you raise her versus how you're raising your boys?
No.
Why?
Because I grew up as an only girl.
Okay, with brothers.
And I think so much of who I am has got to do with the fact that we've never been treated differently.
Interesting.
The conversations, obviously, with my mother were different as a woman.
Yes.
But we've never, ever been treated differently.
Everyone washes dishes.
Everyone does everything. Well, also being the firstborn, I probably got the best opportunity out of all of them.
Okay.
My dad made sure I could drive as soon as I was the legal age to drive. He taught me how to drive. So there was never anything different in how we were raised. We were given the same principles. And I think that made me believe that I could be anything. And that there were my gender had never been an issue. I mean, I also went to girls' schools all my life. So I think that also helped. And I'd actually still do that with her.
So she'd still go to an all-girls school. What is it about the all-girls school? Because see, I'm counter. I'm like,
oh, really?
Co-ed.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
No. So, so there's two sides of it.
Yeah.
So the one side, it's great because you get to be who you are without competing.
In a girls' school?
Without competing with another gender, without competing with...
Okay. Are you better than boys?
Boys...
You can celebrate just who you are.
Celebrate that. I went to a school, the school I was raised in was a school that really celebrated women leadership.
Nice.
You know, and that was really about girls being leaders.
Nice.
In high school, I was a really awkward teenager. Hey?
Yeah.
Like, I was very awkward. I was skinny and all these things. Yeah. And I had pimples. Yeah. And I really blossomed late. So I was a late bloomer. So I didn't have to deal with all that. Look, we had a boys' school down the road.
Yeah.
Right? So I didn't really have to deal with the pressures of boys here and all of that.
You could just focus on you.
I could just focus on me and on my journey. And I did really well at school and I enjoyed school so much because of that. The flip side is that I got to varsity. And I was like...
Boom, boys. I'm feeling sexy.
I'm now here with boys. Initially, I was like the little tomboy that hung out with the boys, and they were all my friends.
Yeah.
But eventually, there's interests that in you, and you're only discovering things for the first time. That when this guy says this, that's not really. Yeah, that's not really quite.
Yeah.
Kosher. No. You know. I did really well at school and I enjoyed school so much because of that. The flip side is that I got to varsity. And I was like,
Boom, boys.
oh,
I'm feeling
sexy. But all of a sudden it was like, oh, there's boys here. Okay.
Let's deal with this now, yeah?
And I think it was a matter of almost pressure. Okay, maybe I should have a boyfriend. Maybe it's about time I had a boyfriend. Well, they're here.
Okay.
You know, maybe I should. So I started having those thoughts and started exploring those ideas and thinking of those things rather late than everyone else, you know? Which I suppose some people will say, oh, that doesn't hurt anything. But you're naive. It means that I was very naive.
Yeah.
I'm now here with boys. Initially, I was like the little tomboy that hung out with the boys and they were all my friends.
Yeah.
But eventually there's interests that in you, and you're only discovering things for the first time that, oh, when this guy says this, that's not
what
really,
he means.
Yeah, that's not really quite kosher.
No.
You know, so you're discovering things late, and so I think that was the only thing where maybe going to school with boys, I would have learned
earlier how to navigate
that space.
Fantastic, fantastic. All right, let's lighten it up a bit.
Yeah.
What do you love most about yourself?
Ooh. Jeez. What I love most about myself, I love that I can express myself.
Great.
A lot when I write, a lot more than when I speak.
Yeah.
Which people always find
I
difficult to believe.
I can relate with that.
I love that I've been gifted in that way. I love that I'm able to be somebody. You can't put me in a box, eh?
Yeah. Period.
In my life.
Yeah.
You can't put me in a box.
Where all things are concerned.
Where all things are concerned. Well, if you tell yourself that, oh, okay, she's this intellectual, whatever.
Good luck, because I'll
good
flip
luck.
on you.
I will flip it on you.
Yeah.
And I'll get creative on you. If you think, oh, she's this church girl, I'll flip it on you and I'll get onto a dance floor and I'll get
teach
down.
you a thing.
You know, so you can't box me. And I love that. And I love that. I
Lovely.
think it has a lot to do with my parents. They probably don't realize it because I think they thought they were really strict and whatever.
Yeah.
But I think they allowed us to be
gave you
who
them
they are.
space.
They gave us space to be who we are.
I'm also very interested in how we fix our families as black people and how we treasure the relationships that come from even a semi-functioning family structure. That even in dysfunction, all the roles and the relationship are still important into forming and creating a well-rounded human being. Having prefixed it with all of that, do you think your life would be different had your father not been involved in your life? And how so?
I definitely think so.
Okay.
I think my life would be different. I'm the apple of my dad's eye.
Wow.
So he's not like the most expressive person. He's not going to write me poems or anything like that. But my life has... he's not that guy. But I've always... My life... Let me tell you a quick story.
Yeah.
So truth. When I first got married, I think he was just struggling to deal with the fact that I wasn't around. You know? So he would send me messages and say, we're having your favorite pizza. I was gonna, okay, am I supposed to now pack up and go
and have the favorite pizza?
Or he'd be like, oh, I'm in the area. Listen, my parents lived in the north and my friend and I lived in the south.
So it's not in the area.
It's like
you left your house in
area. Kind of pop
he
in, you know.
You.
He missed me. And so he's not the guy who's like, I miss you so much. He's not like that.
But
he's gonna watch this and like,
oh, thanks, Nobuntu.
But I was the apple of his eye. The things he has done for me, the things he's sacrificed for me, who he's allowed me to be. To him, I was always the best runner.
Wow.
I was always the most intelligent kid.
Wow.
I was always, you know, to him, I was the best.
And he expressed this to you,
you know,
in his way.
In his own way. And sometimes just directly, you know.
Wow.
And he supported me so much in everything. My dad, when I was in grade 1 and in preschool, we went to private school and we lived in the north. We didn't even. We lived in the hood, of course.
Okay.
So the trip there was so long, and there were times when we didn't have a car at home, and so he would walk me.
Wow.
He would take the bus together, and then he would walk me to school, and then he'd take another bus to go back to work, which he had passed on the bus taking me to school. You know, he did that for a year before he could allow me to get on the bus
by yourself. Oh, dang.
So, I mean, as like
That's
a young
awesome,
woman, he'd pay my parking tickets. He'd be like, and all my traffic tickets, he'd be like, the mail would come and see the tickets would be like, Nobuntu, when are you paying the tickets? Dad, I'll pay them. Next thing I know, they paid. So I've always, I think it's molded a lot of who I am because I believed that I could be anything, and I believed that I was a princess. And it also had a lot to do with who I eventually decided to settle down with.
I was going to ask you then,
In
did
my
it
life.
inform you when you were then looking for a partner? You were like, when I Slim Shady. Not you.
Look, my dad and my husband are quite different.
Okay.
Actually.
Yeah. So you didn't marry your dad?
I didn't marry my dad.
Okay.
But I knew what it was to be taken care of, and I knew what it was to be loved.
Okay.
So that's the difference that it made. I remember somebody who is a family friend, a father who's a family friend, saying to me when I was just like, oh, but he doesn't wash my car. My dad used to wash my car all the time, and he doesn't do all this. And I was like, he's not your father.
Okay.
He's not your dad.
Yeah.
So don't expect him to be your dad. He's not here to father you. He's here to be your partner. I'm not going to like it when he starts fathering me.
Yeah, you're like,
anyway,
I've got a dad. Magic, can I help you?
You know? So they're not the same, but I knew what it was to be loved.
And so,
because of
what
dad.
you were looking for was, can you, okay.
Yeah, well, I wasn't, okay, that's just another story. I was never looking. I got married so young.
Okay.
Like, I really wasn't. I really, really wasn't. I just happened to meet somebody. I met him when I was 21. We got married when I was 24.
Wow.
So it wasn't necessarily that I was looking, but I knew.
When you saw him and met him, this is it?
Yeah. And I knew what I was willing and wanted to live with.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
I do spiral into insanity. First of all, let me put it out there.
You do.
I think the past couple of months have been like that.
Okay.
I completely spiraled into insanity.
Yeah.
And when I do, I have to have a moment of Lisa, come back into myself.
Yeah.
And have a sit down with myself and with God and kind of just rearrange my life.
Okay.
And so that's what I've had to do just in this season of my life. Yeah. I've had to let go of certain things.
What have been the greatest lessons you've learned from how your mother has mothered you, and then in turn how you mother your kids?
Whew. My mom did sacrifice so much. Yeah. And I feel like my mom thrived to be these amazing things so that I could know that was possible.
I like that.
My mom's done way more than I ever have. Honestly, she's achieved so much. Yeah. But she was also always the present mom. I don't know how she did it. She was also, like, she was still that mom that cooked for us. Yeah. She was still that mom where you're just like, oh, all I want is my mom's cooking. She was still that person who was nurturing, but she was still out there slaying. Wow. And she's a very humble person. So she'll never really, I don't even think she ever recognizes just how incredibly she's done. Especially given her background. She came from the dusty streets of Emutu.
Wow.
And she, against all odds, you know, became a powerhouse, you know, in her own right. And I don't think she realizes what a big deal that is, ever. Wow. Ever. Wow. And she was still a mom though. She was still there. She was still praying for us. My mom has shared a story that she prayed for us. As soon as she knew she was pregnant, she would start praying for us while we were in her womb. Wow. She would start praying about our partners that we will ultimately end up with. She would start praying about our future. She'd pray. And I learned all that from her. My mom is a praying woman. I'll see her praying all the time. Yeah. It's either she's studying at 4 a.m. or she's praying at 4 a.m. or she's making lunch boxes at 4 a.m. But she was just this woman who just did so much. And now being a mom, I don't know how
you recognize it now? You recognize it now?
I recognize it so much. I'm just like, how
can you just I'm exhausted?
That's why then she still got a master's degree. I'm like, I'm not getting a master's degree. Like, it's okay, hey? Yeah. Like, it's alright. Like, it's alright to you. What I've studied up till now is great, but she still did all of this stuff. Yeah. And she was always very transparent. Okay. So she was this mom who didn't hide stuff.
I like that.
Which is usually the typical black thing. Yeah. And I wrote a book, and in my book, the mom in that book is that book. That's not my mom, guys. Not my mom.
Now everyone's like, oh, we know.
No, my mom shared everything. Even shared when I was old enough what was happening between her and my dad. Yeah. My mom would tell me about being a woman.
That's great.
My mom, you know, she was always so
open.
Afraid. She wasn't afraid. She spoke about boyfriends. She spoke about when you're in a match.
Because that's the thing, because that's the thing. I feel that as beautiful as our culture is, some of the barriers and some of the challenges we face now is that it served us well, like more often than not.
Yeah.
But where it's actually starting to almost kind of hurt us in this 21st century space is in the inability to then, for moms to have those conversations with their daughters.
Yeah.
The lack of the willingness
Yeah.
to talk about, like, kids will jola, kids will have boyfriends and girlfriends, and as long as we are afraid and you're not gonna date, you're not gonna have a boyfriend, but all of a sudden when you're 21, when are you getting married? Like, Kanti, you've never there was no transition between do you know what I mean?
And then all of a sudden you must be okay with doing all the things that come.
And you should know naturally how. And I think part of it, and I'm not necessarily throwing the entire blame on the culture, because that's unfair. But it also makes me question some things around teenage pregnancy. Like, if we were having actual sex conversation, both with girls and boys, and teaching our children how to have safe sex. Now, mind you, like, I shrink at the notion of having to have a sex conversation with Ulwandle when the time is ready, because do you know what I mean? But it also is a reflection of my own person. And how now, as he's young, no, guys, I'm not going to be having a sex talk with a 2-year-old. But how I embrace my body and what it means and the beauty of it, and then start to get him to have a relationship with the notion of body and physical appearance in a less mystified and overly glorified kind of space, and the responsibility that it comes with in terms of how you hold yourself and how you honor your own self, let alone the faith conversation that comes into this space. And so I do know that for me, it is conversations generally are a big thing for me. But one of them saying, okay, cool, like, culture evolves and culture adapts, and and we are stuck insisting that things that don't fit us.
And there's devastation that comes with this stuff, because you couldn't tell anybody. Right? So I've started a movement called Dear Little Sis, because there's so many young women who get into situations and they can't tell anybody. So first of all, they get into those situations because they couldn't tell anybody while they were deciding to get into the situation.
There's no to talk
But then
to.
Now they're in situations, I'm pregnant. Oh my gosh, it's the end of the world. I'm going to have a termination. Like, it's not even considered properly. There's no thought processing. And
where do I go to get it terminated?
All these conversations. And the point of the matter is, if we were being open about it, you probably wouldn't be in the situation with an unwanted pregnancy in the first place. Do you get what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And so those are the things. It's knowing that the door is open. It doesn't mean people have to move out of their principles. I mean, we're talking about culture and faith. It doesn't mean move out of your own principles. Your kids can know your principles, but it doesn't mean that you can't have conversations with them and teach them and help them to be safe, and help them to be able to come to you when they're in trouble, because otherwise they'll go to the wrong people.
And it's also one of the things that I loved that one of my previous guests said, is that you also have to recognize that children are not your own, and like at the end of the day, they're going to do their own thing. So yes, you can, yes, you'll place the law about what sex is and what happens and what doesn't happen and when it happens. Like at the end, and the kids will go do their thing. I know I did. Like, curfew is this time, or do you know what I mean? Like we all have broken our parents' rules and regulation at some point. And I think for me as a mom and with my husband, we're learning to counter our battles. What matters? Do you know what I mean? And then figure out how do you shift, and what, like at the core of it, if you place a rule, it's not just for a rule's sake. What are you trying to teach the child out of that rule? And I know that it gets really hard then for us when it's like, or you know what I mean? That then makes things complex.
The way my 8 and 4-year-olds already have answers for everything. There's no ways I could even have that. Like, there's never been an opportunity for me to say, we've started
with the why.
Like,
can you do this? Why? Mommy? Because mommy said so.
Of course.
Why
did mommy say so? And mommy said so is not enough.
Why?
Good enough.
Why? Yeah. Okay, cool. Being as busy as you are, running your businesses, serving in ministry, being a mom, 2 quick ones. How do you find time for you? Because I'm a firm believer that when I arrived in this world, it was just me.
Yeah, ne?
Ne?
Yeah.
Yeah, he didn't say I'm sending you to be a mom, G.
No, it didn't come
there's a purpose that exists. Yeah, there's a purpose that exists, and there's an identity that exists which starts with me before it starts with being mom and with being wife and being businesswoman. So how do you not spiral into insanity by getting in touch with who you are?
I do spiral into insanity. First of all, let me put it out there.
You do.
I think the past couple of months have been like that.
Okay.
I completely spiraled into insanity.
Yeah.
And when I do, I have to have a moment of wusa, come back into myself,
Yeah.
and have a sit down with myself and with God and kind of just rearrange my life.
Okay.
And so that's what I've had to do just in this season of my life.
Yeah.
I've had to move things around. I've had to let go of certain things which no longer actually serve me, which I'm no longer able to pour into as much as I'd like to.
Okay.
Because also we hold on to things and it's like, you're actually not really serving that thing either.
It's
Just like
fine.
how
Let
it's
it
not
go.
serving you, let it go. And so that's what I have to do. I always have to constantly do like a spring clean and a check of my life.
Okay, I like
To
that.
say, okay,
Where we up to? What's going on?
Where am I? What's going on?
Yeah.
Why am I feeling overwhelmed? Because I do feel overwhelmed.
Okay.
Look, I call it overflow. I like to call it overflow, but it can't just keep flowing and flowing, you know. And I know that when it's like that, it's a season of overflow in my life. There's lots happening, and it's all good and it's great. But I have to come and have
the tree down.
Trim the tree down. Can't be all things to all people. And one of the things in my journey of womanhood, I've had to learn is I can't be all things to all people here. I'm not deputy Jesus.
Yeah, you can't miraculously show up
I
everywhere.
can't.
Yeah,
And I have to let go of things, sometimes even of people.
Wow.
And
that's hard.
it's hard. And you just have to know that actually, you know, I'm not all things to all people. The world still
Will rotate.
ne? On the axis. It'll still go around. Things will still happen. But the primary things in my life that I've got to serve are my family, my purpose, and my God. Like, literally, those are the three things I've got to serve.
Great.
And I've got to let go of the things that are not serving those things.
Wow.
And that's how I find time for myself.
Okay.
And now I'm at a place once again where I'm starting to find time for myself again.
And what do you do? What does finding time for yourself mean?
I sit in bed and I read.
Beautiful and simple.
Like, it's so simple. I sit in bed and I read. I go for a massage.
Okay. Just you.
Just me.
That's nice.
And also my husband's great. When he can see that it's
not going well.
He takes the boys.
Okay.
They go somewhere for like half a day. He goes and plays with them, or he takes them swimming or whatever. And like that
Just
half a day of
is
just
enough for
silence
you.
in the house, so much. They'll do so much for me.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And how do you keep the 10 years marriage, no?
10.
How have you done it all? Like, how do you keep the fires burning? How do you keep the romance?
They haven't
the
always
season?
been burning.
I like that. They haven't. Yeah.
They're not always burning. Sure, 10 years of marriage. It takes, first of all, learning that you're not perfect.
Yeah.
And forgiving yourself when you don't do right and you don't do well.
Yeah.
So I spring clean my own life, and we also spring clean
the
our
marriage. I like that.
Because there's times that come where we have to kind of sit and be like, okay, so like what's going
happening?
on?
Yeah, we're not gelling.
What's happening?
Here.
We're not gelling. Like something, you can feel when the vibe is gone. You can feel when, you can feel when
You
you
just
don't know
roommates.
each other anymore.
Yeah.
Where you're just like, okay, has this happened with the kids or whatever, running out, running in, you know, and we just, it's a conscious thing. You've got to be so cautious of it. And so that's what it takes. It takes making the time to be cautious about it, being conscious of it, and knowing that this thing's not going to run on its own. It's not going to run on its own. It's not.
There's no magic wand.
There's no magic wand. And also what I've learned for me that it's taken is, this guy, I married him because he was my best friend.
Yeah.
Truly he was.
Yeah.
And he still is.
Nice.
And it takes for me realizing when there's things that are taking his place.
Go.
Yeah. Things, people, whatever, that are
you
taking his
sacrificing
place.
him.
When I'm sacrificing him. It takes me realizing that.
Good to know.
Good to know.
I've
The
shifted the
best
position.
friendship is
Not quite
it's
shitting.
not quite, so when the best friendship is there, the fire is there, all of it, the flames are
It's
there.
natural.
It's natural. The
like
spiritual
that.
connection is there. It's all there.
Yeah.
But it's just about the fact that this guy, I married him because he was my best friend.
So let's keep the friendship
keep the
going
best
because then
friendship
everything
going.
else works.
Everything else works.
You
you
always
know?
said when she and Rubego are good,
Yeah.
everything is good. And so she works at making sure constantly that they are good.
There's times when I've slipped, where I've let it go.
Yeah.
But fortunately, things then happen very quickly to make you see that, something's not
Hold
okay.
up.
Pause, you know.
Yeah.
And he's a very patient guy.
Yeah.
You have to be married to me.
You're special.
Ooh, you have to be.
You are
Such a very
special.
special person.
Yeah.
And then I think he always knows that because I'm a God girl, I'll always
Yeah.
come back to myself.
Yeah.
You know,
Just give you some time.
give me some
It's gonna be alright.
And you know, somebody, if he doesn't say it,
Yeah.
and if he doesn't say it enough, and if I don't
Yeah.
get him,
Yeah.
somebody will speak to me on his behalf, and I'll get it. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. You know, it's
that's
evidence of you
incredible.
just showing up and agreeing to have a conversation with me
Yeah.
today. But I am so grateful of how you've lived your life.
Wow.
Because
Thank
you gave me the freedom to live my own and know that no matter what happens, I'll always land on my feet.
Wow. That's so
Thank you,
incredible.
babe. Thank you so much for coming through.
Nobuntu, you are like a rainbow, my friend, an array of beautiful colors which, while beautiful in their own right, become something truly heavenly when brought together. Thank you for your honesty and generosity. We've reached the end of our episode today.